Long, long ago, long before you and I can remember, long before your grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents can remember, there were no people living on the land where we live today. There were woods and plains, but no people. There were rivers and lakes, but no people. There were deserts and mountains, but no people. There were plenty of birds and fish, and animals and insects, but there were no people. But that was thousands of years ago, much earlier than any of us can remember. Eventually, still thousands of years ago, the first known people who lived in America, called Native Americans or American Indians, made their home in all parts of the continent. Some Native Americans lived in the desert. Others lived in the mountains. Some lived in the woods. And others lived on the coast near the ocean. But the food the desert people ate was not the same kind of food the coastal people ate, and the houses that protected people in the woods did not look the same as houses of those who lived in the desert. Some lived in teepees. Some lived in weetus. Some lived in hogans. Some lived in pueblos. And others lived in longhouses. Native Americans of long ago had to rely on their knowledge of nature, of the earth, the plants, and the animals that surrounded them. And everywhere they roamed or wandered, these Native Americans found ways to borrow or use from the earth all they needed to live. Some Native Americans grew their own vegetables and fruit. And others hunted buffalo. Some Native Americans hunted woodland animals. Others caught fish from rivers, lakes, and oceans. Some Native Americans cooked their food over an open fire. Others baked food in specially made ovens. The Native Americans also needed water, but there were no sinks with running water inside their homes. So where do you think the Native Americans found water long ago? Native Americans collected rainwater. They also got their water from lakes, rivers, and streams. Native Americans of long ago did not have cars and trucks. There were no buses or trains or planes. So, do you know how they got around? Long ago, Native Americans traveled by foot. There were no paved roads, and Native American paths were made by the pounding of their own footsteps and the hooves of animal herds. After Native Americans were here for many years, they started using horses. After that, some traveled on horseback. Those who lived in the woods used their feet to make their way through thick forests of trees. After many years, those who lived on open plains welcomed the speed of horses to carry them long distances, and those who lived near lakes and rivers relied upon canoes to carry them across the waters. No matter where they lived, Native Americans made all their own clothes. Some Native American women and girls wore skirts and dresses. Men and boys often wore breechcloths and leggings. They used materials from their surroundings to make their clothes. Some Native Americans wore clothing made of animal skins: elk, deer, buffalo, and rabbit. They often decorated their clothing with beads, porcupine quills, and fringe. During the cold winter months, they wore coats of animal fur to stay warm. Others wore clothes made from the soft inner bark of the cedar tree, sometimes decorated with seashells. Still others wore clothing made of fibers from different plants, cotton and yucca, and they trimmed them with animal bones. In winter, they covered themselves with cloaks to stay warm. Many men, women, boys, and girls in each of the Native American tribes across the land, from the oceans to the plains to the woods, wore moccasins on their feet. Some, however, preferred bare feet. And so, you see, the people who first came to live on this rich and varied land that we now call the United States of America were just as rich and varied as the land itself. They were alike in some ways and different in other ways, just as the people of America are today.